What's going on, everyone, and welcome to my review of the latest Stephen King adaptation, Pet Sematary Bloodlines. Now, I've got a couple of things to get out of the way first. One, I'm slowly getting over this miserable fucking cold that I've been having for about 6 weeks. So hopefully I'll start sounding a bit better. Two, The Exorcist Believer. I'm sorry, I'm not seeing it in theaters. I don't want to waste $15 on something that looks like a just complete mediocre cash grab. And I'll eventually watch it when it comes to streaming services, but I'll talk about that in my end of year ranking video where I rank all the films that I saw in the year. And the third thing I want to say is that Chucky Season 3, I saw the first episode. I was very, very pleased with how it started. I think it's got promise. With all that being said, let's talk about Pet Sematary Bloodlines. So, I'm very confused with this film because I thought it was coming to theaters. That turns out I was just wrong. It was never actually going to come to theaters. But I don't blame myself for thinking that it was going to come to theaters, because when you have a movie attached to a very well-known IP, especially in the horror community, you kind of think, okay, well, this is going to get a lot of people interested in stuff like that. People are going to want to see the newest addition to the Pet Sematary franchise. Obviously, it's not quite as influential or as recognizable as Halloween or just recently The Exorcist, but it is something that I feel like most horror fans would be interested in seeing. So when I realized it was going straight to streaming, I became a little confused. I thought if it was going to theaters, it would just be kind of like a shitty cash grab movie with no real purpose. If it was going to streaming, which it is, there's two things I thought could have happened. I thought maybe one, it could have actually been a really good just underground gem that just couldn't afford really good marketing. Or two, it's gone straight to Paramount Plus for a reason. And look, I'm still confused on that. I just don't really know the story with this movie at all. But let's talk about the movie itself, because it surprisingly has some merit to it. So firstly, I do think that Lindsay Beer, the director, knows what she's doing. I think that she's got some promise to be able to go on and direct bigger and better things. But just for an example, I'd say the opening act of this movie is quite good. And a lot of that is, just getting to know the characters, getting familiar with the location and setting. And that kind of like initial framing, it shows the town well enough. There's enough like, they're driving along the road, it'll pan over and show like, the Welcome to Ludlow main sign, and then pan back over around to the car. It's done well enough that, you know that she knows what she's doing. She's establishing the town, and it's commendable. I think the fact that you can watch this and for the most part be like, yeah, okay, it's a watchable movie is what I'm trying to get at. It's not an awful movie. I also think that this movie actually tries to be more than what everyone would expect it to be. There is some genuine attempt at some substance here, which is more than what I expected, because I was looking forward to this kind of, but I was also hesitant because there was a part of me that's like, okay, this could just be completely pointless because you already got the Timmy Bateman story in the original and even saw it in the 89 movie. I just thought that there was going to be nothing to say. But to my surprise, there is a surprising amount of stuff introduced. I do think that it starts off and you're kind of introduced to Timmy Bateman as a veteran. He's only just gotten home and he's completely shell-shocked. He's basically just got PTSD and he's not the same man that he is now than before the war. The problem is that that's got absolutely nothing to do with the war. He was obviously killed in the war, as anyone familiar with the source material knows. He was killed in the war, sent back, his dad out of grief, buried him in the burial grounds, and he came back to life as a zombie. He is a zombie in this film. He's undead Timmy. But that's not really the point. The point is that it's supposed to be kind of like an allegory for the shell-shocked veteran. There's, it's basically an empty version of him. And I really like that they have that introduced. I also think that the character of Judd and the character of Norma are set up quite well. You root for them. You want them to be able to make a splash on the world. They've got goals, they've got ambitions, they want to get out and see the world, and you want them to. Obviously, the problem with it being, a prequel, that they're not. But at least the initial setup tries to give you something to, you want to see. You want to see them succeed, which makes it much easier to get invested in the film than it would be without, having any kind of ambitions for their character. And they didn't go far with this idea at all, but I like the idea of the kind of interaction between Native Americans and Americans in the film. There wasn't really a lot there, but for what there was, I was kind of glad that they gave it a little bit more of a they leaned in that direction a bit more, obviously with the burial grounds being Micmac burial grounds, like a Native Indian American burial ground. I don't know a lot about it, but I'm glad that they at least tried to connect it back to them and give kind of a bit of a very piss weak reason as to why the burial ground does what it does, but the attempt was there. And you can tell that Lindsay Beard definitely wanted to give this movie a bit of substance. And finally, I'm going to say the gore in this film is very well done. It makes you squirm, it is disgusting. It doesn't belong in the movie, but it is done really well for what it is. Now, moving on to the negatives, pretty much everything that I said good about this movie is contained in the first act. The idea of Timmy Bateman being a shell-shocked soldier, it's there. Once the characters realise that he's actually undead from the Pet Sematary burial grounds, the Micmac grounds, whatever, all intrigue with that is just lost for the rest of the film. And it's not very good. And also, once you realise that Judd and Norma are never going to leave Ludlow, about 20 minutes in, and an incident with a dog happens, and you just know, they're going to be trapped here. Again, my interest levels just went, whatever. I mean, I knew they were going to stay, but still, I wanted to see a bit more. And that's the main problem with this movie for me, is that there just isn't enough. I appreciate the attempts of what they're trying to do, but holy shit. It's just another one of those movies that reverts back to gore and shock value in the completely just most inappropriate times. And I don't mean I just mean this film and this series isn't about violence and gore. It's about the mental and emotional impacts that the horror can give you. And when it starts off with that, war, PTSD, could have been really interesting to weave into this story. But then, as I said, after the first act, it's just like, hey, look, blood, guts. I'm like, yeah, that's cool. It's keeping me somewhat entertained, but it's very throwaway. I also don't think much of the acting in this film was great either. I think that Henry Thomas was alright, Pam Grier was alright, everyone else I could take or leave. And finally, this film, in its final act, it really starts to lose its footing a bit. I think that the kind of good directing from the first act, it carried into the second act well enough, but then the third act, there's a lot of times when you can tell the characters are just standing in front of a green screen, and it's rough. And the editing is very, very sloppy. It can be hard to tell what's going on, especially when things get really crazy in the third act with a lot of things happening. It's not really crazy, but just, people start to die, there's blood going everywhere. It's just very results to handheld to kind of cover up any lackluster effects, and it's rough. And also, the third act is fucking ridiculous. There is just some things that happen that, let's just say there is catacombs underneath someone's house, and it's just like, what the fuck? What the fuck is going on? And there's all these traps, it's a collector and shit, and I'm just like, what the fuck? How did they do this shit? This is just ridiculous. So overall, guys, Pet Sematary Bloodlines was okay at best. I don't think it's this complete train wreck that a lot of people are making it out to be, because it does have some genuinely good ideas and some decent directing from Lindsay Beer, and it's clear that she is a fan of the source material and wants to explore that world. it's just frustrating that after the first act, that kind of ambition to explore those themes that have been introduced are shucked aside for genre cliches and mindless gore. I'm going to give Pet Sematary Bloodlines 2.5 stars. Guys, thanks for watching my review of Pet Sematary Bloodlines. If you've seen this movie, let me know what you think of it. I'm going to be doing a ranking of all 4 Pet Sematary films in the franchise pretty soon. So look forward to that. But anyway, I'll see you all later. Bye.